Life as a Reaper Emissary isn't always all that easy. Of course, in the tales we tell at a tavern we speak of glorious combat and the satisfaction of taking away other pirates' hard work. But more often than not, we end up sailing the seas for hours upon hours without coming across any worthwhile prey. I mean, I'm not complaining about it because frankly, that's a life that me and my crew ended up choosing. But I also know that a lot of you guys out there might be in the process of choosing a career path of your own. Selling goods without the benefit of an emissary flag feels like such a waste of time in this day and age. And considering the fact that the Reapers give you a fat bonus on every single item you bring to them, no matter what kind of item it is, that makes it quite tempting to join them. Now of course, if you are looking for pure profit, it makes a lot of sense to complete PvE events in favor of whatever emissary you chose. But that's just not as satisfying as acquiring your loot in visceral combat, even when most of the ships we sink end up having barely any cargo. So today, I want to bring you on board of our vessel so that you can see what an average day for a crew of Reapers really looks like. You're not only gonna see the sinking of many ships, but also witness us engaging in negotiation with other crews and ultimately find out how much or how little money we ended up making. Despite popular belief, being a pirate, and especially a Reaper, isn't always about shooting on sight. So without further ado, let's get into the next chapter of the Sea of Tales. When starting off your day as a Reaper Emissary, you have to ensure that it's even worth getting out of bed. There are two things you can look out for to guarantee that this is the case. The first one being a quick check on all the emissary tables. The most valuable emissaries to us at present are gold hoarders, simply because the newly discovered vaults of the ancients are being looted left, right and center, making it more likely that these fellas have something of value on their ships. So if there's more than one of them on the seas, we usually consider that something worth thinking about. Another thing we like to do is check the map for specific events, such as the Fort of the Damned, or somebody stacking Reaper's bounties. I consider it particularly lucky when another crew leaves their storage crates at an outpost, because these things are very useful for pirates of all kinds, but almost necessary when sailing on a massive galleon. At this point, the biggest challenge is waking up my crewmates. Most of them have a tendency of sleeping in, meaning that while they brew their morning coffee, I spent my time loading up the ship with resources. It took them especially long to get up today, meaning that by the time our crew was assembled, the Reaper bounties were already gone. After going through our plans for the day and assigning roles to everybody, all that was left to do was set sail and look for some fat ships that store a lot of loot. And our first target will be a lonely sloop currently parked at Devil's Ridge. Now I know that most of you are going to assume that we shot on sight in light of the fact that we are sailing under the flag of the Reaper, but there are actually a lot of very good reasons not to do that.
Yeah, hold on. If they're doing Vault of the Ancients, I'm gonna check their voyages. Oh, storage crate.
They're stinking.
They have like 4 holes. Oh
They
god.
scuttled. They scuttled.
No, I don't think they scuttled. They're just
Repair for them. There is really no point in sinking a lonely sloop that doesn't fly an emissary flag, especially when they just began their voyage. Of course we were gonna take their storage crate, but it just makes more sense to let them fatten up a bit, so to speak, so that sinking them is actually worth it. You guys were about to sink, we just decided to, make sure that doesn't happen. Hey, that's rude, man. I was talking to you, just trying to shoot me. At least try to hit me, okay? Dude, come on. Naturally, you can't expect other pirates to react favorably to a galleon crew boarding their ship, especially when all of them are wearing Reaper PJs. Of course, we would return the rude gesture in kind to really make sure the guy knows how we felt about that. I mean, I'm not lying when I said that we weren't intending to sink him, but he definitely was sinking before we arrived, meaning all we did was undoing the favor of repairing the ship. After that little warm-up tussle, business began as usual. You can't always peacefully board a ship to engage in negotiation with them because, frankly speaking, if you're the kind of pirate that decides to ask questions first and shoot later, chances are you won't be a pirate for long. It is also worth mentioning that the Galleon is not exactly the most nimble vessel on the seas, and it's also really slow unless you can sail into the wind, meaning the #1 challenge is making sure that your prey cannot run away. Hunting down other Reaper emissaries really is just par for the course, because you have to assume that they're going to be hunting ships down in the same way you are. We usually stay away from attempting to negotiate with them because chances are that they'll shoot on sight anyway, and we much rather keep all the loot for ourselves. But that does not mean that we don't respect our fellow Reapers for engaging in honorable combat. Though with that said, we did try to give them the proper Reaper send-off.
Alright, ready?
Ready?
It's alright.
Unlucky. The seas were absolutely loaded that day. Every time we turned around, we saw another sloop that was ready to be sunk. And while most of them really didn't give us a run for our money, more like trying to run away with their money, we did go through the effort of sinking each and every one of them. One crew even desperately tried to sell the loot after we sunk them while we were fighting another ship. Thankfully, having the man advantage makes a big difference, allowing us to collect their loot as well as the rank 1 Reaper Emissary flag from the other guys we were fighting. So far, everyone we fought accepted their defeat with dignity, but we were about to meet one faithful crew that just didn't want to follow their example. Considering the lack of challenge presented to us so far, none of us really thought that this lonely Order of Souls vessel would be any different. Our designated boarders immediately got on their ship while I was covering them with cannon shots, but when they both fell into the ocean without dropping their anchor, I had to take matters into my own hands.
I killed one and the other one's fighting me in the water.
I'm pushing their ship into the rock, but then we're gonna need some repairs as well.
They anchored again?
Go ahead, Berg.
I'm dead? What? I'm dead. They caught anchor.
How are you dead, Cliff?
I don't know, he shot me. If you ever needed a reason to double tap your targets, this would be it. Both of our boarders for some reason thought that the guy I was fighting was dead, when clearly he didn't even take enough damage to die to a blunderbomb blunderbuss combo. I'm just gonna say how it is, fighting a galleon's worth of competent pirates as a sloop is very much an uphill battle. And while calling us competent might be a bit of a stretch, when it comes to combat situations, having the man advantage really makes a huge difference. As such, I can understand when one gets upset over losing one such encounter, though I don't have any respect for those who stoop low enough to throw around salures and the like. But it got even better once we both returned from the Ferry of the Damned.
They think we're hackers.
They must be
Bro,
Xbox
you think
players.
we're hackers?
Xbox.
Alright.
Off.
Okay, so they're around here somewhere. Oh, nope, never mind, they just left.
I think I turned this Xbox off.
Cliff, I think you actually turned this Xbox off.
Now, I'm not gonna pretend to understand the machinations of Xbox pirates, and while it was funny to claim to be the reason they disappeared, considering the sore losers they were, chances are they just headed off pouting. It has been a long day of sinking sloops, something that can get rather boring and monotonous for sure, meaning that when we found another galleon, we were more than ready to hustle. The only problem was that they didn't seem to want to fight back. We spent a not insignificant amount of time chasing after them before deciding that it just wasn't worth our time. But I mean, we're not against the idea of negotiating. Well, the alliance only works in our favor if you actually have stuff, so, you know.
True. Any alliances
Brandon.
in chat?
Nice commentary, Brandon. True.
True, though.
True.
We eventually gave in and accepted the alliance offer when we saw that there was another ship we could attack instead. Sometimes it's just not worth running after a crew that has no intention to fight. I know common sense would dictate that pirates are more likely to run when they actually have cargo on board, but more often than not, it's just them being cowards, loot or not. Following that exchange, we had a couple more sloop encounters in which one of them decided to scuttle the moment I set foot on their ship, because that's what most people do, and because we were tired of bullying sloops, we offered the other one to stay afloat in exchange for their cannonballs. An offer they ended up declining. Really, the main attraction to us was still the galleon that we allianced with. Needless to say that we expected them to disband their alliance before selling their loot, meaning that we decided to spare them a little visit.
Hello.
Hey, what's up?
Hi, how are you?
You guys doing?
What are you guys up to?
I brought you a storage crate.
Obviously, we were fully intending to take all of their resources with the storage crate we brought on board, while also taking a bit of a sneak peek at the voyage that we're currently on. They must have been in a state of shock, considering that none of them said anything at all. And as much as I was digging the fact that they were sailing in matching outfits, when they began raising the anchor without further explanation, we had to consider that an act of defiance. We took our storage crate to all of their resource barrels to empty every single one of them, and whenever they returned from the Ferry of the Damned, we sent them right back there. Truthfully, we were not expecting a lot of pushback in the first place, considering that they first decided to run away and then attempted to get us off their trail by offering an alliance. I keep saying that we're sailing on the Sea of Thieves and not the Sea of Friends. You're just better off assuming that everybody you meet is going to try and take your stuff. I mean, it's right in the name. Once we were done emptying their resource barrels as well as taking their chests, we repaired their ship to make sure they can complete their voyage, with me leaving them with a parting gift. One that just so happened to ignite a keg they hid in the crow's nest. So as you can see from today's tale, Reaper Emissaries aren't all about indiscriminate sinking of ships. We specifically target other Reaper Emissaries to make sure we don't have to share any of the loot with those who are likely to engage in the same activity as us. We are also more than willing to negotiate with those who, well, are capable and willing to engage in negotiation with us. We don't necessarily benefit from sinking every single ship on sight, and if we can get a good social interaction out of somebody, we're often willing to let them go. Also, if they start making racist jokes, you can be certain that we're going to sink them. Heck, we're not even giving them a chance to grab a mermaid, because as much as we might come off as rude absolute douchebags, there are certain things even we don't tolerate. Now, this was a very, very long day on the seas for us, and I've only shown you like, what, half the encounters we ended up having? So it might surprise you to find out that we didn't actually make all that much money. You'd think that sinking upwards of 15 ships would net us a massive payout, considering that we don't sink everyone indiscriminately and definitely try to allow them to fill up on loot. But that is just how the cookie crumbles. Being a Reaper is not always the most profitable thing to do if you are truly living by the mantra of taking things away from others. But at the end of the day, it is more fun to take 100,000 gold worth of loot from others than getting 300,000 gold by putting myself to sleep. And that concludes today's chapter in the life of a Reaper Emissary. Hey, thanks for watching another episode of the Sea of Tales. Just a quick reminder, I'm uploading these in interchanging weeks. So next week's gonna be an Overwatch story video, followed by another Sea of Tales, and so on and so forth. Some people still seem a bit confused about that. Either way, if you enjoyed what you've seen, do consider to let me know by dropping me a like on your way out, subscribe if you want to see more, and definitely hit that bell icon to not miss out on my next upload. I hope you guys have a day filled with riches on the sea, and until next time, peace.